Hey, I'm JP from Bike Mart. Have you ever wondered what the best time to eat before your ride would be, during your ride or after your ride, what the best thing to eat would be, or maybe what's a drink, what the best hydration would be? Today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Alan Lim, the founder of Skratch Labs, to give us a little more insight about nutrition and hydration. So as I said, I'm JP. I run our online sales department at Bike Mart. And we just wanted to do a quick little interview with you to ask a few questions for some beginner cyclists and just give people a background to the great work you've done with Skratch Labs. It's a brand that is very near and dear to our hearts. I use it almost daily. And yeah, I'm a huge fan. I love all the work you've done and all the teams you've worked with. So this is a dream come true for me. So let's do it, man.
Dang, I haven't been this successful on internet dating at all. So yeah,
Me
thanks
neither,
for
man.
clicking on my profile.
What's your cycling background? How'd you get into it? How did it all start?
It started for me as a latchkey kid in Los Angeles. They say nobody walks in LA, and so I basically rode my bike all over LA. And my parents were a little too busy to know that my brother and I were basically roaming the streets of Los Angeles, chasing down RTD buses by bicycle. But it was really the Boy Scouts of America that kind of created the curriculum for me to learn about cycling. And too bad, so much scandal, right? But they
Right.
taught me how to ride a bike. I then joined a local bicycle team run by it's called the Montrose bike team out of the Montrose bike shop in Southern California, just outside of Los Angeles. So, talk about local communities and shops helping a young kid. From there, it was basically collegiate cycling, UC Davis, and then CU Boulder when I was in grad school. And collegiate cycling has always been near and dear for me. I got my first kind of professional break working for USA Cycling as a resident coach at the Olympic Training Center. And then, got my PhD and joined the Pro Tour. Now I'm basically just kind of a volunteer coach, and I'm on the board of an organization called Pedaling Minds, which teaches young kids how to ride bicycles, along with ex-pro I used to work with, who's one of my dear friends, Mike Friedman.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, collegiate cycling's a huge thing for me. I raced while I was in school, and really cool springboard to meet a lot of really awesome people. So.
Yeah. I think that there is a lot of how do we develop our youth in cycling, and it really is about localism. It is about organizations like the Boy Scouts or the YMCA or local bike shops like yours who are contributing and giving kids access. And then from there, I think there is a strong both high school NICA and collegiate path, but it is an expensive sport, and it's definitely hard to break into.
Certainly. What can you tell me about Skratch Labs? How did it start for you?
It started out of necessity in a lot of ways. I was in a place in my life where I was starting from scratch along with two really close friends, Ian McGregor, who was also a former pro cyclist on the, TIA Craft Garmin franchise, and also an old college roommate, Aaron Foster, who had previously had a successful art business and was trying to break through as a stand-up comic. So needless to say, none of us were doing anything meaningful with our lives. No, actually, I was just finishing up with Radio Shack, and that all kind of detonated in great scandal. And for me, it put some pause on my career because of the guilt by association with Lance Armstrong. And so, I started Skratch because I wanted, along with Ian and Aaron, to feel that we had some capacity to take care of ourselves, but we were really just looking for connection and belonging. We were looking for some purpose and some meaning. And many of the athletes I was had worked with previously were asking for the recipes, the drinks, the ideas that I had given them when I was working on the pro cycling tour. So it started because it was a way that we could continue to help making others better. And it gave me a reason to exist. We call Skratch, not just because we believe food and drink is better from scratch, but because we believe that no matter where you find yourself in life, you can always start from scratch. And that's near and dear to us.
Yeah, that's what a great way to look at things, certainly. What would you say to a new cyclist, man? Like, we have a ton of cyclists that really just are just now kind of getting into it and starting to ride longer and in different times of the year. What's a great way for them to put the right things in their body to get the right things out of their body?
I think first and foremost, it's hey, just relax, right? We get thrown so many ideas, and I think that we are all overwhelmed with, not just kind of information overload, but with the paradox of choice when you walk into a shop and you see so many different products that are marketed and touted to improve your performance. My advice has always been listen to yourself, get in tune with yourself, you know, um, try to figure out what works best for you. And it's okay if you're not on trend, right? If you don't have any major complaints, don't start looking for them. And I think that cycling and the marketing in cycling tends to feed this idea that we're not optimized and that we need something better to improve our performance or improve our lives. And it may very well be the case that you're doing just fine. I would say that, with that in mind, most of the new cyclists I work with tend to find themselves on too far of an extreme. Either they are way over prepared and they're feeding themselves too much, or they're way under prepared and they end up hitting the wall or being really dehydrated and, kind of learning the hard way. So find some middle ground.
That's really great advice. Thank you. What type of nutrients? What's the best thing to put in, and get going?
Yeah.
What should you focus on? I think
I always recommend things that are edible.
That's
that's like a really
start.
good start.
Yeah, nails.
Yeah, when you think about what nutrients are important, there are three major macronutrients, right? You're talking about fat, protein, and carbohydrate. And for cyclists, carbohydrate's the most important because it's the one macronutrient that tends to be rate limited. We can only store so much carbohydrate in our muscles. And it's the one energy source that allows us to do high intensity efforts or even just surge. Like, so if you're starting at a stoplight and you're just getting going, you're using probably carbohydrate as the major fuel source, and then fat and then protein, right? So having a mixed diet that is primarily based on carbohydrate tends to be the endurance athlete nutrient of choice. But, holistically, I would say just make sure there's a lot of color on your plate and don't be afraid to eat foods that actually, come right off of a tree and that you have to cook in your kitchen. There's good evidence that no matter what your beliefs are around diet, that if you cook your food from scratch, if you actually prepare your food in a kitchen using primarily whole foods, you're going to be better off than using primarily prepackaged foods, right?
What about a good pre-ride meal? Like, we're going out for a ride. What should I be eating?
As you can tell by my hat, a good pre-ride meal for me is probably a bowl of rice with a scrambled egg on top or a fried egg on top and maybe something green, right? And timing's important there, right? So a good pre-ride meal for me probably is something that happens about 3 hours before I actually go for that bike ride. So it just depends on timing as well. If you're haven't had a good meal a few hours before your ride, you might want to eat something right when you get started. But eating something kind of in that gray space, say an hour and a half before a ride, is probably a bad point, because what will happen is you'll bring in this food into your body, your blood sugar will rise, you'll get a hormonal response where a hormone called insulin's released, which then pulls the sugar out of your bloodstream, and combined with exercise, which also pulls sugar out of the bloodstream, you could find yourself starting your ride a little hypoglycemic, which, paradoxically, despite the fact that you just ate something, makes you feel like you're bonking, right? So timing is everything with the pre-ride meal, and keeping things simple and delicious, I think, is ideal. What I usually saw on the Pro Tour was some sort of rice-based meal, but some riders would eat a little plate of pasta with an egg on it. Some riders loved oatmeal, depending upon the time of day. Yeah.
Okay. What would you say about kind of the combination of hydration and nutrition? What's
Ooh,
yeah,
the great hydration versus nutrition debate. Yes, this is an age-old question. And as we've learned from places like Death Valley, California, you'll die from dehydration before you starve to death. So obviously, I favor hydration over nutrition. You can survive quite a long time without eating, but you won't survive all that long without drinking. With that in mind, they're both important, right? They're both essential parts of, how we sustain our lives, and they're both, when you talk about hunger and you talk about thirst, they're both basic hedonistic drives. They're ingrained in basically everything we do as human beings is the desire to quench our thirst and satiate our hunger, right? So drink when you're thirsty, man. Eat when you're hungry. I learned that in college. They gave me a PhD for that.
That's a really, you should put that on a bumper sticker. I think that would really be very impactful.
Yeah.
What about a good mid-ride snack?
What I like, and you don't find it everywhere. Actually, it's pretty hard to find. I like a big old ball of rice with a piece of fried chicken in the middle. Have you ever had that on a bike ride? Let me tell you, it will change your life. Don't be scared to fry yourself a little chicken, get yourself some sushi rice, two great tastes that taste even better together.
Yeah.
I think that I'm kind of well known for the sushi rice cake. This is something that I made for the athletes I worked with when I was on the pro tour. I used to travel the world with a rice cooker, but you can eat anything. You can have our anytime energy bars are great. A little energy chews, you can have Rice Krispie treats. That's a classic gas station ride food.
Oh, certainly.
Pringles don't work very well. I've tried. I mean, they work okay, but
Yeah.
Lays are a little better.
a little better. Yeah. Choose your poison.
So what should we be looking for after the ride?
Something that's carb heavy, 60% carb, 20% protein, 20% fat. I'd be looking for something that is really, really delicious that makes you interested in eating. Not that you seem to be an uninterested food person. You seem pretty interested in food. A bowl of chicken fried rice, that works. A nice fat burrito, that works too, as long as delicious. And more importantly, as long as you can get that in within the first hour or 30 minutes of your bike ride, because after a bicycle ride, the muscles that have just contracted are really sensitive to this hormone insulin, again, that brings sugar into the muscle. And so the calories you eat after exercise will preferentially go to refueling those muscles, then get distributed across the body to both fat cells and muscles that have not worked. So if you were to eat the same meal and you had not exercised, you're probably going to distribute, depending upon your mass, that energy more evenly across both fat cells and muscles. Whereas immediately after exercise, you're going to distribute most of that meal into the muscles that had just exercised, which allows those particular muscles that did that hard work to recover.
Yeah, it's all about building those muscles back, certainly.
Yeah, exactly. And, just giving them the fuel so that they're loaded and ready for the next day.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Should the recreational cyclist that isn't necessarily interested in competition, should they be thinking about setting their expectations differently?
Only if their racer friends are assholes.
A great answer.
No, just kidding. Yeah, there is this idea that we need to be sitting at different tables because we do different activities. And I think that by and large, what I have seen is that the food we eat does not change. And while being at bike races, I barely get any exercise anyways. The staff and the athletes would by and large always eat the same food for breakfast, and dinner. The difference would be that the athletes would maybe eat 3 to 5 times as much as the staff would. Right. That's a really good example of how you have very extreme populations, a guy riding in the middle of the Tour de France versus maybe, a mechanic or a sports scientist like myself sitting in a car all day. And we're functioning on really the same meals, but the portion sizes are very, very different. I think that it's important to say this because what ends up happening when you start to think that you need to eat very differently for your sport is that you begin to eat in isolation. And this is a disordered pattern that I saw a lot of in sport. And that isolation when eating is really associated with a lot of not just psychosocial health issues, but real physical health issues, right? No matter what you eat, I think being able to share that with others lays the foundation for good nutrition and good health. So JP, you got to stop eating by yourself all the time.
I'll
Right?
share a little more. Okay.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's all about sharing. Okay. So how do we know if we're hydrated? When do we know we've done the job of hydration?
Well, you're not thirsty and you're not an ass. Thirst works pretty good too. And I haven't seen it betray a lot of people. What I have seen betray a lot of people is when they drink way beyond their thirst
Mm-hmm.
and they end up over drinking, which can actually be more of an issue than under drinking, right? You can, yeah. In fact, being underhydrated, while it takes a long time before that will kill you, you can overhydrate relatively quickly and kill yourself because you dilute out your blood sodium. And so drinking plain water absent sodium is really the overhydration issue. So yeah, I would say listen and respect your thirst. Don't overdrink. And if you're thirsty, by all means, have some in your drink. And if you're exercising, make sure you're replacing the salt that you're losing in your sweat. You can replace that by eating salty foods like those Lay's potatoes chips or drinking sports drink that has adequate amount of sodium in it.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. So when we talk about hydration, it almost feels like naturally we talk about a hot ride or the summertime riding, which I think serves to disserve a lot of people because we ride all year long. You live in Boulder, we live in Dallas. I just got off the bike. What should we be thinking about when it's a little cooler out as far as hydration and nutrition as well?
Yeah, I think you're thinking about the same things. You're thinking about thirst. You're thinking about hunger. You're thinking about your community and what you're eating. You're sticking to those whole foods. If you are thirsty and you don't feel good, obviously drinking a little more may be a very, very quick remedy to it. And in the worst case scenario, if you do overdrink, you're just going to pee that out. So unless you're in some sort of competition to impress all of your friends, likely the hyponatremia is not going to be an issue. There's some other things that you can think about in the wintertime too. If your blood pressure is very low, or if you're standing up from a chair and you're feeling lightheaded, that might also be indicative of lack of hydration.
Yeah, right. That's great. What should a new cyclist think about when thinking about something new? I've always told customers and my friends, don't try anything new on race day. Obviously, I think that's a hallmark of anything sports related. Don't try anything new before a big event. But really, when we're trying to try something new, what's your best tip for that?
Yeah, I think maybe one hallmark is this, especially around something like hydration. I think people need to recognize that hydration is both, especially during exercise, both about the water as well as about the salt, right? It's about water and it's about sodium. I also, really kind of get the adage that you don't want to try something new before race day. But I also get the adage that if something sucks during training, you're not going to adapt to it. And somehow it's going to become better for a race day. So I hear a lot of people say things like, well, you got to practice using this shitty nutrition in training so that you're ready for it on race day. And well, if it was already bad and didn't seem to improve or make you feel better during training, then why would it be better on race day? Aside from the fact that you're accustomed to how bad it is.
Right.
So I think that training does present a good opportunity to really test to see if you like something. And I don't think that sports nutrition has to taste bad. I don't think that it's designed to be something like medicine that you have to just swallow, right? I think that the best sports nutrition that I've always seen is something that athletes end up wanting, craving, and that substantially makes them feel better and improves their performance at the same time, right? So I tend to tell new cyclists like, yeah, there's a lot of suffering involved in our sport, but you don't always have to be in a state of malaise, and it doesn't always have to be bad. This goes for your sports nutrition as much as it goes for your chamois.
Right. Yeah, it should hurt, but you shouldn't be uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. It hurts when you want it to hurt, not just because you threw your leg over the bicycle, right? If it hurts because of that, then maybe your fit's not right. Maybe you need to actually upgrade some component or equipment, you may want to actually, try a different product.
That's great. Yeah. What's something you would suggest that everyone who rides a bike would benefit from? What's, on a personal level?
Ooh. Well, let's talk about this from a community level. I would say lobbying your city, state, and federal officials for better cycling infrastructure by donating to an organization like People for Bikes. That would be something that would benefit you and us and all of us as a community, because I think a great barrier to cycling in America is safety and making sure that we have access to great trails and protected bike lanes. And that if we did that, we could substantially increase not just our own personal health, but the health of our nation. And also, y'all gotta, I'm gonna do this in my best Texas. Y'all gotta sleep more. Y'all don't sleep enough. So anyone who rides a bicycle or lives in America would likely benefit from just sleeping more. We're too cavalier about how little sleep we get. And it's a false narrative, at least physiologically. Did you know that, like, if you normally sleep 8 hours a night and you only get 4 hours of sleep the night before, say, a vaccination, that vaccination is only about 50% as effective? That, like, your natural killer T cells, for example, with one night of bad sleep get reduced by half to a pathogenic insult, right? Like, one bad night of sleep can really hose you. So you combine one bad night of sleep with one hard training day with one, guy who sneezes in your face and you're sick.
I've never heard those numbers. That's a great way to think about it, certainly.
Yeah. So let's lobby and let's sleep more.
Lobby for more sleep. I like that. What do you think about stretching?
Holy cow, living in Boulder, Colorado, it's basically all we do in our free time. It's yoga, it's Pilates, it's throwing Frisbee shirtless in the park. Like, it's all good. I think that anything to enhance the fact that we are very, kind of focused on one linear movement in cycling is good, to be able to open things up. Unfortunately, the cycling position is very akin to the keyboard position. And so I find that most cyclists, when they're not riding, are in front of a keyboard to be able to kind of open up your chest in particular, right? I think that's generally good advice. I also think that there are lots of folks out there who are much better with those off-bike regimes and that strength training as well as that straining. We'll use a guy named Jeff Hubler from Apex Coaching for all of the strength routines and all the stretching, flexibility routines that the athletes I work with utilize.
Okay, that's some great advice. That's interesting that what you're saying about the keyboard position. Well, I was actually just talking to my boss about that. We spend so much time sitting at a desk, then maybe we get out a couple days a week to go ride, and we really don't change what we're our position from our day at work and our day off work.
Yeah, it's the same position, right?
Yeah, and so you're naturally going to build up some imbalances and some weaknesses. What is one guilty pleasure you have off the bike?
Oof, so many. It's quite embarrassing. I love a good tube of Pringles on a road trip. Like, how can you not? You walk into that gas station, it's an embarrassment of riches, isn't it? From the gummy worms to the Pringles to, who knows what. But yeah, junk food, car rides. I might just get in my car later this afternoon just so I can eat like shit. I don't know. Maybe not.
You and me both, man.
I think during the pandemic, it certainly has been what I would call unsupervised TV binging, like no one's there to tell you to stop.
Right. Yeah, that's I find myself in that as well. Well, when you're trying to not watch Netflix, where do you ride your bike? What's your preferred method of riding? You a mountain rider? You been on the road a lot lately?
Yeah, I'm all things. I'd say I'm pretty. I'm a big proponent of what we call the Boulder bubble. The riding here is just spectacular. That's why I moved to Colorado. That's why I moved to Boulder in particular. There's a really great mix of little gravel roads and road riding here and little secret paths. And I don't know why a ride gets so excited when you're cutting across somebody's property and you don't tell them. I don't know why. I know it's bad. But anytime you can find some sort of cutoff or access or secret path. So I like doing a lot of rides with my friends where we literally get lost, but not arrested.
Yeah, That's a key.
Yeah. So yeah, Boulder, Colorado, get lost, but don't get arrested. Find new roads, find something off the beaten track. This is where I think gravel and wide tires and wide rims have really been one of the best things that could have ever happened to the sport of cycling.
I couldn't agree more. I love finding those roads that you'd think, oh, that doesn't look very comfortable, but it looks like a lot of fun. Let's see what that looks like.
Exactly. And this is where, my traditional roadie self has really gone the way of the SBD cleat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty great what you can do with a little bit of mud on the bike. That's
And maybe sounds weird, but it's not a good bike ride if you're not having to walk a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think you appreciate pedaling when you have to hike the bike a little bit.
That's right. That's right.
Any other advice you'd have for our viewers? Any parting wisdom?
Yeah, I think everyone needs to just relax a little bit, right? Like cycling is such a technical sport now, but I like to remind people that it's still just a bicycle. It's not a rocket ship. It's not the Concorde. You can have fun with any type of bicycle, whether it's just like one of these like city rental bikes versus a BMX bike versus a commuter bike versus, that $12,000 super bike that you're drooling over, right?
Yeah.
It's all just a bike ride and it's all good and it's all fun. It doesn't matter if you're in chamois or if you're in jean shorts or jorts, as you like to say. I think that, cycling is first and foremost a very necessary reprieve from all the madness in the world right now. And if we can do a better job of taking care of our physical health, the mental health comes along with it. And we all certainly need to be mindful of that. And that, for me, cycling has always been about community building. It's been a great way to conversate and spend time with folks without having to look them in the eye, because that's awkward.
That's certainly
One of my favorite parts about it. It's a great way to meet people and get out and enjoy the space. Certainly.
Talk to me about your most intimate feelings and details, but don't just look straight ahead.
Please,
keep your eyes on the road.
Me, but I'd love the conversation.
Yeah. I'd love to know what pains you. Tell me.
Well, that's great, man. Alan, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and give us a little bit of insight for some of our beginner riders and, make the ride a little better for our more experienced riders.
Yeah, have a good time out there. Have fun. Listen to yourself. It's your body. You got to decide. And I think that that's good wisdom. And we all have kind of the devil and the angel on, either side of the shoulder. We all know what is better for us and what is not better for us. So make the choice towards better.
That's great. I like that a lot. Well, thanks, Alan. I don't want to keep you too long. I really appreciate it, man.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for having us, and thanks for all the support.
We hope you enjoyed the video today. Skratch Labs is available in-store and online at bikemart.com. If you have any questions, give us a shout. Please like and subscribe. Have a great ride.